up to the white number is typical growth. So if the kid gets typical growth, that student will move from a 174 to a 184. So 10 RIT points is typical growth. Here's the problem. 10 RIT points may not be enough for that student to be on track to meet growth on the state test. So what we want to do, and this is a big part of what you'll get here this morning, is to understand we want to calibrate goals so that our students are forecasted to meet growth, okay, on the state test. Because just because they got typical growth is not, or may not, and typically sometimes is not enough for that student to meet growth on our state test. So we need to know. And a way you can do that is with this document that I gave you. Now, let me share with you what you're looking at. It was derived from the linking study, but it is a Chuckyism, meaning I created it. But all I did was divide the ranges for 1, 2, 3 so that we have AB. And I want to tell you how I would advise you to use it. Now, the research team at NWEA likely wouldn't like it because as you scrunch a range, it increases the standard error of measure, and that is true. But we need to know from the base cuts about where they need to land. So in those grades, if you got to know where the student performed on the state test the year prior. So let's say I've got a 5th grade student that was a 2B. That means in 6th grade they have to be a what? 3A. A 3A. So then I look for 3A. Minimally, the student needs a 213. The range division is a 213 to 217, but here's how I would do it. And I want to make sure we understand this part. I would take the 213, add 3 to it because 3 is the standard error, and that's where I would set the kids go. Everybody with me?
Does anyone need a copy?
Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out from the state test where does a kid need to be the next year in order to meet growth. Once I do, I'm going to go to the base cut of that. Let's say that it is a 2B. They need to be a 2B. Well, the base of that, the low number, is 207, plus 3 is 210. So Chuck's goal is a 210. That means I'm forecasting and I can see, is Chuck getting close, or can we forecast that he's on track to meet growth on the state test? That is huge. Question.
If you change it in the student profile, does it affect the ASG?
If you change it, and it's a great question, if you change it in the student profile, does it change the ASG? It changes nothing. So it's a great question. That's why I wanted to bring it out here. All it does is when you create the goal, until you hit the set button, by the way, anything I say today, what you need to do is jot that down and say, I'm fixing to do that while that man's here. So if you got a question. Achievement Status Growth Report. Okay? Now, by the way, she will do very well, won't she? Why will she do very well? She asked the question. So if you got something, be sure you ask the question. Don't leave without getting it. So achievement status growth, and you'll be into that once you have some growth numbers. But when you go in to set that today, if you set it, temporarily, it's going to show you where it would be. And it'll put it up there. Once you hit set, this will go right back to here, and it's going to appear above it. And factors in none. Because these numbers here, y'all, are just something for you teachers to be able to look at. Because here, I can take a look at where does the kid need to be, and I can put it up top. And all it's going to do is allow me to see this, if I can do this thing. Right up here, it's going to put your custom goal up here. It's just going to show it to you, the number, across the top. But down here, this is still going to show typical growth. So here's what's cool about that. Well, Chuck's met typical growth. He's a little bit above it. Problem is, when we first plug this in, he's going to need 4 RITs higher. He's really going to need a 188 to get there, which he'd need to grow 14 RITs within this term. Now keep in mind, these numbers that I gave you, and that you have, those are spring numbers. So all of a sudden, if you plug them into the system now, your goal is for a winter goal. So the only value, so you could do it one of two ways. You could kind of split the difference and say, Chuck needs to be, if he's got to grow 14 total, he needs to have about 7 by the winter. You could do that. Or what most of them are doing, they're just going ahead and putting the end goal for the winter so that they want the visual. Like, I want to be able to see, she wants to see what did Chuck grow, what was typical, and then what does he need to be forecasted to meet growth on a state test. Okay? Now, is that pretty clear? Okay.
I'm a new person, so we can go in there and add that. So it's going to show the typical growth here, which is 10, but if my child needs 15, then I will put that at the top, and I enter that myself.
That's right. You go in and do it. It's very easy. We'll do that while we're here. Anything that I mention that you say, man, I'd like to do that, don't leave here without going through the clicks. Because we're gonna have plenty of time for us to split up and do that. Everybody good here? Now, let me tell you other thing about a term that I'm using. And I started using it because we have misused the term projection. You notice that I've been disciplined to say forecast. Same thing as projecting. But here's the problem. The vendors, and remember, if you know me, I work with all the different data tools. So if it's in our state, I work with them because I run the education side of Bailey, and they all purport to project proficiency, and some purport to project growth. So the problem with that was that we kind of misunderstood, because we would go in and somebody would say, well, it projected that we were going to land right here. And when we took the state test, we landed right here. So then they would say, that means it's a good predictor. Y'all, you never want to land where the forecast or projection was. Otherwise, what use would it be? So if it says, her school is projected for 45% to be proficient and above, does she want 45%? Heck no. She says she does not. If it projects 45, I want 55. Does that make sense? So a happy face is when you get your data and every number, every grade, when they take the state test, lands above the forecast. Because that means we did something about it. Am I making sense? So if you want to know how do you use that forecast, you never want it to be what it was, what that projected proficiency tells you, or this forecast for growth is. Right now, based on where Chuck is, he is forecasted not to be proficient. But she knows I'm close and wants me to be, so what are you going to do? She's going to work with me and get me what I need so that I do what? So that I go up and I am proficient, and then she's going to be proud that I am. Does that make sense? So just remember on the forecasting how to do it. So this part, I think, is going to be really cool, because remember, you're dealing with a so unequal interval scale. It sounded good to say, oh, Chuck got a 2A, and a 2A, he had to get 18 questions correct. And remember when they came out with the raw score to scale score chart? Well, if you like knowing that, and if it makes you feel better to tell the kid that, please do. But just know it doesn't mean anything, because the tests at every level are different degrees of difficulty. And knowing that I got to get 2 more right or 2 more less, it just doesn't do anything. But knowing about the scale and knowing about whether or not we're on target or forecasted to meet growth, that's where I would spend my time. Okay? Everybody good?